Related papers 46 to 50. A letter pertaining to journal tending. Hello, dear Joseph. Your letter is most insightful, fun, and sincere. I can understand Rachel's joy in corresponding with you. It is just before a spring storm here, I hope. The trees and other green things are eager for the rain. Black clouds are gathering in the west, a north wind hints of a blow, and the new apple blossoms are dancing in anticipation. Joseph, your seminary friend sounds like a genuine, greatest character I've ever known person. You asked, how would I handle such a situation as that? A man who loves dogs so much he has 40 of them in his home. Are you ready for this? I would decide to know this man better than anyone I'd ever known, as if I were going to write a paper about him to submit for publication. Most certainly I'd not attempt to change him. Day after day I'd let him tell me exactly how he feels about dogs and why, and where his grand love for them developed. With all my heart I'd try to get inside this man's heart, because there is something special there, very special, Joseph. I would let him become my writing discipline for a month or so, or longer if it takes longer to hear him open up and pour out his inmost feelings. How does he relate his spiritual ideas to his surroundings and pets and friends? Such inner questions would be tremendously interesting, coming from one who lives, as you relate, sleeping with his animals. But change him? Never. If he were to act like other people, he wouldn't be as unique, different, unusual, remarkable, distinctive, divergent, incomparable, or sweet, would he? Gosh, Joe, this guy is extraordinary. Learn from him. We all play roles, don't we? Look at the silly one I have. How did I get saddled with being a luminary or an authority on anything? Everyone is a luminary. Over the years, so many have tried to change my way of looking at the world. Oh, how the churches tried to conventionalize and modify my insights. Suppose they had succeeded. The notes from Woodsong would be relative at best and ordinary. Charles is Charles, unique and beautiful. If Charles didn't act as he does, Charles wouldn't be Charles anymore, but only our notion of what he should be. So there you have it, Joseph. As you look closer into Charles' feelings and tender places, he will begin to appear different to you. Right? It's sorta like taking a walk in the woods one has been afraid of to walk in before. It appears different when you get into the place, and there are new things to discover there. Our first attempt is to change the whole woods into a conventional place we are accustomed to and aren't afraid of. But when that doesn't work, and it isn't supposed to, we change ourselves by broadening our outlook. The more I think of your friend Charles, the more I'd like to know him, to really know him. The marvel is, when we know like that, the one out there changes right before our eyes. An old man in the Smoky Mountains taught me what contradistinction means. One day I asked why he stayed in those lonely mountains. He had been retained as a caretaker by the government, but was one of the original settlers of Cade's Cove. He said he stayed because it was so beautiful. Then I asked him, he was a country bumpkin to young arrogant me, what he meant by beauty. With great patience, he told me about leaving the cove and going to work in Washington, D.C. during the war. While he was there, he had unbelievable difficulty, losing his wife and son and developing a lung ailment of some sort from all the factory smoke. When the war was over, he returned to the cove alone. He said he looked around and saw the blue sky for the first time in his life. He tasted the sweet water for the first time and watched the beauty of the changing seasons. All things he had seen and known many times before, but now he knew what real beauty was, having seen so much that wasn't like his Cades Cove. I spent many days camping there and hours talking to that kindly old man who sold honey, 50 cents a quart jar, on the narrow dirt road that runs through the cove. His notched log cabin is still there in the park. Suppose someone had changed him, Joseph. No, he changed me, and that's always the only place real change can honestly happen. Here, as I, identity, never out there with people. I change me by understanding the divine I more fully, and then I see people more clearly. I hope I haven't bothered you with too many words, Joseph. I am practicing on my fancy new word processor, a little computer that some thoughtful folks knew would make my work easier. I'm learning slowly but surely. Everything gets named here at Woodsong, and the computer's name is Rabbi Moses Goldberg. He's quite a guy. Librarian, lexicographer, file clerk, typist, accountant, indexer, semanticist, and all-round good guy, willing to work at all hours for cheap, as long as the electricity is on, and it looks like it may go off at any moment as this storm approaches. Kindest love to you, Joseph, and many thanks for your encouragement, without which I couldn't write these letters. This work at Woodsong is your work, too. Woodsong, 1984. The Bible in the Light of Subjectivism. Objectively, the Bible is a history of revelation and prophecy. Objectively, it has served to bring the central core of mankind to love God and men. Subjectively, the Bible confirms our own inner revelations. That is, we find our glimpses echoed in the Bible, confirming the validity of our own discovery. Objectively, the world looks for its inspirational glimpses from reading and talking about the Bible. The Bible has been the ship's rudder. The subjective comforter and the historic Jesus. People who study the truth via subjectivism or metaphysics tend to think of Christ as God, as truth, but not necessarily as man, especially physical man, stressing the Christ rather than the man. The metaphysician speaks of Christ but seldom of Jesus. Metaphysics, carried to its absolute extreme, having dismissed the mortal man, must dismiss all mortality or men. So, it sublimates history and must, in consequence, think of the biblical or historic Jesus and all events in time as illusion or myth. This is not peculiar to the West alone. One finds the same thing in Eastern philosophy. Let me state quickly that neither the Christ nor Jesus is a myth. When first the mountain becomes not a mountain, our move from objectivism to the discovery of metaphysics, for a time the concept of a mortal man goes out of the Christ for most earnest metaphysicians. Well then, how does one at this level of things, before he has moved beyond metaphysics, describe the historic Jesus of Nazareth? When one of the good old-timey fundamentalist churchmen collars him, how does the metaphysician respond? Not very well, clearly, or there would have been greater interest in subjective studies. A good statement that can withstand the onslaught of bickering theology needs to be made, but to do that is tantamount to making a rock fall up. Here is that question, recently put to me for the 10,000th time. What is the significance or relationship of Jesus Christ to me as this awareness I am? Let me try to answer that question to the satisfaction of a thinker. Truth is applicable at all levels of human understanding, but the metaphysician has never been able to give a satisfactory answer to the fundamentalist churchman. Not just because the churchman hasn't come to accept subjectivism yet, but because subjectivism can't make the whole statement of truth. However, the child of us can. In reply to the question above, I must answer from the metaphysical, subjective, middle position, so it will all remain subjectively correct, but still be understood objectively by the one who hasn't caught the subjective idea yet. I begin a full answer. I can speak only for myself. Subjectively, people and history unfold within my awareness. I have no awareness of Moses, Abraham, Jesus, Genghis Khan, Dolly Parton, or anyone outside this conscious, subconscious awareness that writes and reads these words. I take myself to be this awareness within which all bodies appear, including this one that plunks at the keyboard, as well as the one who asks this one a question about Jesus. Everyone, including the one who reads these words, is within myself, yourself, as awareness. This is self-evidently and undeniably true for each of us, even for the theologian who dismisses it as silly solipsism. His dismissal doesn't make it untrue. Identified as awareness, I look outside and see trees, flowers, people, and history in the making. All myself as awareness, going on in an unending now. I look out and see evidences of the past, history, and possibilities for the future. I look out and read history books and Bibles. I look out and see attracting, compelling, unifying things and ideas, which are all within this self-awareness. I look out, and despite all the teeth-clenching metaphysical absoluteness I am capable of, I still seem to see, distracting, repelling, dividing, and destructive things, all within awareness. Wheat and tares. The wheat and tares outside myself have an equivalent inside. The tree and the warm glow of the setting sun evoke a sense of beauty. The unifying things evoke a sense of harmony and joy. The distracting things and divisive scenes evoke discomfort, distress, disease, and so on. The obverse of this is true as well. I feel a sense of peace within and look outside and see evidences of that peace as happy and harmonious things I might not have been aware of otherwise. Part of the mystery is the Christly admonition to make the inside and the outside into a single one. Let us examine this solipsistic fact for a moment. The first thing I see when I look outside is this body image at the typewriter, an image more sensitive to me than all the other images, from this objective point of view. Stick a pin in this image and I yell. Stick one in that image and I may yell, but I don't always feel the pain. My view seems to be limited to the purview of this first image, whose name is William and who sits here at the typewriter. But it isn't. After these many years of subjective living, I have learned that awareness isn't limited at all, but can and should perceive from many viewpoints simultaneously, including some views little understood by the more distant images I see within myself when I look out, and especially not understood by my religious selfhood, nor even by my metaphysician friends who should understand. For that matter, awareness sees things undreamt by men. The belief which the world proclaims, and the beliefs, viewpoints I hear spoken out there in the people world, are written and spoken from the position that identity is that first thing I see when I look into the mirror. That body image, which is so sensitive, the world says, is our identity. This form and shape that sits here writing and answering your question is said to be the identity I am, an identity not unlike the form of the man who walked the hills of Galilee. But, clearly, to me, the body image is not my identity. Rather, the awareness that looks out and looks in, thinks out from that body is the identity I am. The awareness within which all bodies and trees and books and artifacts appear is my identity, as nearly as I can establish at the metaphysical level. My God, if I'm not but the body, and I'm a mere bucket of blood and a sack of tremulous pumps, if I'm only that, I am what my mother and father made. If I am life, I am what God made. Therefore, this awareness is the subjective identity I am and think of myself as. From this perspective, all tangibility, all things, thoughts, ideas, books, historic figures, and all history itself are within the awareness I am. And this awareness embraces every form of everything. Clearly, Moses spoke of this identity as having dominion over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. He also indicated that we lost our sight of it very quickly in the scheme of things. Well now, subjectively, metaphysically, some of the things I look at are more meaningful to me at one time or another. When it seems this first image within awareness, the William body, is hungry, food is a sight to enjoy. When I look at a unifying idea within the world of myself, I feel more satisfaction than when looking at or listening to a destructive idea, a dividing idea, or one that creates doubt and confusion in myself and in the world. But what about Jesus, for Christ's sake? My questioner thunders. He is the most unifying idea I have, my friend. But keep your shirt on. I'm answering your question reasonably, logically, step by step, leaving nothing out, which is the way the answer comes to us, okay? Your question will be answered if you will be patient. William Samuel, I tell you that Jesus is the blood of the Lamb. Jesus saves. Jesus is the way. Praise Jesus. Hallelujah. Thank you for such love, my friend. Now, let me answer that part of your question about the relationship of Jesus Christ and me as awareness. I was saying that identified as awareness, all my knowledge of anything and everything is within awareness, including the knowledge of Jesus Christ. It is exactly the same for you. All the Bibles of the world are knowledge that comes to us by way of awareness. I have no consciousness of the avatars, Jesus, mighty among them, except as they come to me here within and as this awareness. Would you agree with this? I'm lost. It seems so. If I'm lost, why am I trying to save you? You are not really lost, my friend, and neither am I. Let's get back to the subjective views of awareness. About Jesus Christ specifically, because this will answer questions for subjectivists who need to know as well. They especially need to get their metaphysics straight so they can get on with the rest of the work given them to do. Suppose I look outside that window of myself and suddenly, unexpectedly, see a special butterfly, a big, beautiful, flashing sparkle of ethereal light darting through the sky. I am delighted and thrilled. Something in me comes alive. I would like to know more about butterflies, and about that butterfly especially. What do? If that spectacular butterfly passes out of my sight and goes into history, I can still turn within myself to my expert friends, libraries, and books. I find a book on butterflies and learn more than I ever believed possible, because such books are filled with information, are they not? Incidentally, those books are an external confirmation of the wisdom you and I already are internally. We may not know that consciously yet, but that is partly what the human experience is about. One day I find a photograph of my special butterfly on page 1212. I get right down to a knowledge of everything about that special bug, and I'm so fascinated and excited. I pack my bags and make the necessary pilgrimage to Central America to the butterbug's winter home. I visit with hundreds of those particular butterflies to learn about them firsthand, eyeball to eyeball. Now, my friend, listen gently. The holy books of the world have come to me just like that special butterfly. I have gone to the experts and authorities and libraries of the world within myself to examine them further. The Bible, in particular, has flashed and flown through my experience countless hundreds of times, and I tell you, it is surely among the special flashing lights of my world. Inside that book, the story of the historic Christ, the Son of God, is among all the stories within myself, and the most influential record within this awareness. How so? Because something wonderful within me stirs and sings when I even think of that man's statements and parables. So, to finally answer your question right down to the bug's whisker, my friend, I have examined the words of many men within my holy books. But the words of Jesus and the words of Lao Tse are head and shoulders above all other words within myself except for my own. How so? Because those words of Jesus, subjectively understood, told me what to do with this first image, this body that talks to that body, and they told me how to live my subjective view in an objective and apparently divided world of conflicting stories, ideas, and people. And why are my words important to me? Because here, in this world of images, they reflect what I believe. My own beliefs influence my words, and my words bring results in my own subjective arena, here and now. Whose words put those shoes on your feet? The words in the Bible, or the words that came out of your own mouth? Whose words put you into your present church? But Jesus came to save the entire world, Mr. Samuel. In Jesus there is salvation. Have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? You aren't listening, are you, my friend? Much more than acceptance. I have become one with the words from the Christ's mouth. I have become one with that one. Reading and rereading his words, I have come to learn the mystery of those words and stand as one with them. I have drunk those words and eaten them, and they have become me. The one who uttered them in human history came to confirm this identity I am and you are, and the two of us have become one identity. Furthermore, as the inner meanings of those words have come alive within me, this form you are looking at, my entire subjective world is being lifted up, even as I am lifted up in the honest and faithful understanding of his words. As I find God's grace via the words of the Christ and all other ways the light of Spirit comes, my world finds it too, just as you found me to come to and to ask your questions. As I am saved from the former identification, all mankind of myself can and is saved from that mistaken sense of things as well. As I surrender the deadly deception, I come alive as the Christ light for my own subjectivity, my entire world. And this is exactly what the Christ of the Bible told me to do, isn't it? I am doing those things with all the power and authority God has given me. At this point, I looked at the man who had come to ask me those questions, and he was sleeping softly. His wife looked at me strangely, shook her head almost imperceptibly, first one way, then another, as if she were thinking yes, yes, and then no, and then yes again. She wanted me to say something, but didn't or couldn't. Suddenly she burst into tears and threw her arms around me, saying, "Thank you, thank you." Her husband awoke, looking most bewildered. Sometimes I look out and see those images of myself hearing what I'm trying to say. Sometimes they seem to hear and understand. Oftentimes it is as if I were talking to a rock wall or a mud fence. But the one of myself who hears makes plain the one who doesn't. And the one who doesn't tells me I am to say it better and more clearly still, when I can, when, with God's grand grace, I can. In 10,000 years, the world hasn't understood the subjectivist yet. If the world knew how completely the transfiguration has taken place here as awareness, the world would be on the doorstep of the subjective idea, butterfly book in hand, asking questions, prepared to hear the deep things of selfhood. The tree of life is soon to blossom and seed. There isn't much time, of temporal time, remaining. Life is eternal. The mortal tree of life is not eternal. Ask me while you can, says the Christ light of love. The metaphysician asks a question. Dear Sam, you have answered the man's question logically. I understand how I should think of the historic Christ as the is not a mountain position. Now, will you tell me how to think of him from the is a mountain again position? Dear friend, the purpose of this book is to help you answer that question for yourself. No book alone will answer you fully. The answer, surrounded by the wilderness of time and space, lies within you and your own interface with God. Thine own right hand can save thee. Perhaps you should know it took 30 years to write the paper you have just read. It will not take you so long to answer your question for yourself. Just don't throw the historic Christ of the Bible out the window as science and some versions of metaphysics try to do. The child Messiah arrives as we get subjectivism straight. When the subjective idea is clearly in hand, one is able to complete the interface with the world. During the time the subjective idea is developing, one is curled up within himself like a caterpillar in a cocoon. He is living in the world, working in the world, but growing spiritually by leaps and bounds. That is understood. We can't complain about the stasis apparent in the religious, scientific, and metaphysical community, provided we finally perceive movement and progress on the parts of those who are getting their subjectivism straight. I submit that, with subjectivism clearly understood, one perceives for himself how to live it effectively on the objective scene of things. He lives his subjectivism objectively and remarkably in the world, and becomes a light that cannot be hidden. Then the third step arrives. The mountain becomes a mountain again. After a time of balanced living, the ongoing of us are brought to make the surrender of everything. This is part of the time of trouble, the Messianic avatar carefully announced. The final secrets are to be revealed to those who are willing to surrender even their vaunted religion and subjectivism to know God, truth, aright. This is the final surrender, and may very well already have historic as well as subjective confirmation as Judaism's choice to deny the messiahship of the historic Jesus. History records that Christianity indeed views the tangible and intangible Jesus as the living Son of God. Perhaps Judaism, by divine plan, rejected the Son, opting for the Father first and only. There is an objective reward for such a metaphysical position when the final trump is sounded. Perhaps, as the first group who will accept Messiah within the heart of themselves to be the original Christ child of God, the new covenant, for whom the prophet Jesus represents the historic evidence in confirmation, the man who made the surrender. Certainly Isaiah foresaw the child of God. Certainly Jesus identified as that child. It fits metaphysically that the discovery of the child within will very well represent Messiah to Judaism when the child within every man is found, and may even be found by the Christian community as well. But more likely, Jewish and Christian churchdom will fear for their dogmas, buildings, and numbers, especially worry about deceivers and refuse to listen to the child itself right in the heart of them. If so, the ministry of Jesus would be confirmed positively and subjectively. The prophets, including the confirming Christ of history, would be right once more. The child is the Savior. A child shall lead a remnant of children to New Jerusalem, a new dimension. I state as a fact of my own self-discovery, I walked the objective ground first. I walked the subjective discovery second. I lived my subjectivism in the world, discovering the remarkable balance about which I've written. Then I was pushed into total willingness of self-surrender. The surrender wasn't finished until I was willing to give up my most cherished self-beliefs. Even the teachings of Jesus seemed to be subservient before Godhead. Then I was given the keys to the kingdom, the secrets of the child, and the equation with which I proved the truth of the self-revelations and the teachings of the historic Christ. The point here, and I repeat it endlessly, is I was given nothing of the child and the child's equation until I was proven willing, after many years, to surrender even my joys of subjectivism, everything, even God, in obeisance to Godhead. What I have been shown since has been lived and proven, every step of the equation confirmed, attesting the primacy of God first, not the messenger of God, even when that messenger is the Son of God himself. I was finally made willing to surrender the Christ idea for God, perhaps a little like Abraham, and then the secret was given to me so that rather than lose that Christly ideal, I could become it. Since those days, all but a few things I was shown have come to pass, and what has not happened will, if the pattern remains as certain at its conclusion as it has been thus far in time. I see no reason it won't. In the world, resistance to truth is individual, then group-wide, then nationwide, then worldwide. Objectively, the groups will be shattered and shaken as the individual has been, then the nation, then the world. One does not have to be shaken if he moves on with God, but he will be destroyed if he doesn't. These words do not sound very metaphysical, but why do they have to? The truth isn't bound to meet human expectations. God is still a mystery to me, but the self I am, made in the perfect image of God, grows clearer every day, and those who heed these words will find what I have found. We become like the fountains we drink from. Religionists and metaphysicians drink from many fountains and have become a dilute nothing. There is a single fountainhead, God, for whom Jesus speaks. The words of Jesus, in Thomas and elsewhere, are true and faithful. Whatever I have had to say can be found in those words or in the words of Lao Tse, who addressed nature as himself. The man Jesus drank from the prophet's fountain, and I drink from his. Jesus came as the historic, linear confirmation of the child within, the first one willing to be the child of God. I announce the same child of God, present in the hearts of every man. I hail Godhead first. I hail God's original image, the child within, the elect of God. About the hard teachings. There are hard teachings that are not easy to tell of or hear, but as appearances go, these things must be said. One may believe he values the truth more than anything in the world, but when it comes to living the truth, by having to part with some of the old nature or the possessions he deems valuable, his belief becomes a horse of another color, one that bucks at the hard teachings. Those who call our attention to the hard teachings become burrs under the saddle blanket. For instance, there is a long journey in world time between, number one, the first idealistic feelings that one doesn't actually part with anything he gives to his world, and two, the fearless living of that truth wherein he learns for a fact that he doesn't. One of the purposes of the hard teachings is to bridge that gap, but woe to the one who takes such bridging information to a worldly man who loves his own opinions and his worldly possessions. With those people we are to be as cautious as a fox, my friend, and as harmless as a dove. This doesn't state the whole area of the hard teachings. A recent letter from Joanna puts another part of it straight. She writes that in the process of self-discovery, one finds the black side of the old nature as well as the good side. We come face to face with the dark side of ourself, the not-self. Yes, indeed, the suspicious side, the questioning side, the doubtful side, the withholding side. We find all sides before we find no sides. Joanna writes that the comfortable worldly man is titillated by the truth's insistence that he search out, find, and finally surrender the old nature of himself, but he recoils at the thought that his external world reflects the old nature's accumulations, which he must surrender as well. And of course, that is the crux of the matter. When we reach that point in our confirming climb of the mountain, we discover firsthand whether or not we are really willing to devalue the world and actually give a tangible value to the truth we hold dear. Most of us are not, until we are forced to, even though the truth can never be more valuable in our human affairs than the value we actually give it in the world. As Jesus says in the Gospel according to Thomas, many are standing around the cistern, but few are drinking the water. Nearly everyone who has come to Woodsong has heard of the child within us, but few have fully found it, or have waited to hear of the child's equation. Many hang up their shingles and begin practicing the subjective truth before they have a working knowledge of subjectivism, or any knowledge of the equation, much less the living of it. The secret of the equation has been well kept, but the time has come for the world to hear it again and heed. A new dimension awaits those who overcome. There is nothing covered that will remain uncovered, nothing hidden that will not be revealed. That time is this time, and there isn't much time of it remaining.